So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me see if the mic works better. With mic or without, whatever you prefer. A warm welcome again in the press club on behalf of the European Commission representation in Belgium and on behalf of Voxpol. My name is, as some of you know already, Una van Lambert. I'm team leader of the political section of the representation in Belgium. And I would like to take this opportunity again to welcome and thank our co-hosts for Voxpol, represented here today by Marianne. Without them, this series would not have been possible. So thanks again for all your great support. We are happy to welcome you today to the third session in our series of 6 on violent online political extremism. And I must say that last week's session and this week's are very much connected, intertwined. Last week, Professor Ganesh from Groningen University, he focused on the wider picture of disinformation, of the radical right, extremism and disinformation in Europe and North America. He also elaborated on the different definitions, on the evolutions and on the distribution mechanisms. This week, I'll start the session with a brief overview, a non-exhaustive brief overview of the European Union's actions against disinformation. And next, we'll zoom into the work of the Belgian Expert Group on disinformation, as well as into some recent research relevant to these fields in Belgium and France. And this we will do together with our distinguished speaker, Alexandre Alaphilippe. Let me show you his title. He's member of the Belgian Expert Group on Disinformation and Fake News and also Executive Director of EU DisinfoLab. Following the presentations, we would be glad to hear your questions and remarks, as always. And as was the case for the previous sessions, the presentation, not the Q&A, which is on background, will be live streamed. So I highly recommend you to share the live streaming and the presentation afterwards with your network. So let's move on to the starter of today's session. As I said, a brief overview of EU action on against disinformation. Well, first of all, it is an important political priority for us. Well, an important part of our political priorities to fight against it, because it matters to European citizens. As last year's Eurobarometer showed, people are very much concerned about it. 83% of Europeans think that fake news is a threat to democracy. And about 73% of European internet users are very much concerned about disinformation online, and especially in pre-election periods. Disinformation is, of course, a multidimensional challenge which requires cooperation at various levels. It is a shared responsibility of all actors involved, of all relevant actors. Fighting it while defending media freedom and pluralism is fundamental, of course, to protect European democracy. And the rapid development of digital technologies has not only changed the way that citizens consume news, but also transformed the ways in which citizens interact. Online platforms connect citizens. They enable them to create content and to break down geographic and societal barriers. But at the same time, these platforms, they also allow the rapid spread of harmful disinformation that in some cases manage to or seek to disrupt democratic processes. As you all know, evidence has shown that some foreign state actors are also increasingly deploying disinformation techniques and strategies to influence societal debates and to create divisions and to interfere in democratic decision-making processes. So it is our common duty at European level, but also with all, as I said, it is a shared responsibility of all actors involved to defend the core value of freedom of expression and to protect the European citizens, our European societies against the harm of disinformation. At the summit in Sibiu last spring, the 27 leaders, European heads of state and government, they made some recommendations on the future shape of the European Union. And the European Commission, which I represent today, gave an input to that. And on disinformation, there were three main areas for action. So first of all, effective policy measures to regulate online content and service providers. Secondly, innovative communication to build resilience against disinformation. And thirdly, the continued defense of media freedom and pluralism. So these three recommendations were made in light of the Sibiu Summit earlier this year in the context of the future shape of the European Union. Now, what has been done until today? In 2018, the European Commission, together with the External Action Service, presented the European Action Plan against disinformation. It was based on a communication by the Commission earlier in 2018, but more importantly, it was presented to the European leaders, the heads of state and governments, at the December Council of 2018. And this plan, this action plan, consisted of four main areas of action. So as you can see in the slide here, this gives a nice summary of the different fields of action on which the European leaders agreed in December of last year. First of all, they found it important to improve detection, analysis, and exposure of disinformation. So what does it mean concretely? They agreed that we needed to step up investment in digital tools, in digital skills, data analysis skills, and in specialized staff altogether in the member states, but also within the European institutions, to assess and to better evaluate the impact of disinformation. A second area of action consists in a stronger cooperation and joint responses to disinformation. The eye catcher of this area was the rapid alert system set up in March 2019, pre-election time. And this system was set up amongst European institutions and member states to, firstly, facilitate again the sharing of data, the sharing of assessments of disinformation campaigns, and secondly, to alert on disinformation threats in real time, especially again in pre-election times, because the leaders, while they agreed upon these actions in December 2018, they also agreed to speed up this process and to set up this rapid alert system in March 2019. A third point, the rectangle on the left-hand side, and a third area of action was the mobilization of private sector and online platforms, so the online platforms and the industry. So in September 2018, a code of practice, as you all might know, on disinformation for online platforms and the ad sector was agreed upon. And it was actually the first time ever that industry agreed on a voluntary basis to self-regulatory standards to fight disinformation. Facebook, Twitter, Mozilla, and Google, as well as some major trade organizations of the ads and communication industry, they all signed up to it. And they, in the meantime, presented individual roadmaps with specific actions. So it was again endorsed by the European Council in December 2018. And as was the case for the rapid alert system, it was, let's say, sped up before the European elections in March 2019, because the signatories to this European Code of Practice on Disinformation, they committed to their promises, and they committed to delivering their promises fast and efficiently in March of this year. Now, a fourth point of action in this plan against disinformation is the fact that, well, leaders agreed that awareness should be raised increasingly, and we would also need to improve our societal resilience. We do not only do this through our targeted awareness campaigns, but on the other hand, the European institutions also had the wish to promote media literacy through dedicated programs and to provide support to researchers, fact checkers, and people involved in this work on a daily basis. And actually, it is in this context that I have here next to me today Alexandre Alaphilippe. He's not only member of the Belgian Expert Group, as I explained earlier, but he's also in charge of such a project, of raising awareness, revealing disinformation campaigns throughout the EU. And as I said, he's director of a young NGO, EU DisinfoLab, which is focused on researching and tackling online disinformation campaigns. So we talked about these 4 pillars of the European Action Plan against disinformation. The 4th pillar, the empowerment and building the resilience, we will build on that one, especially within the European Commission as well. So research, technological innovation will be funded, projects will be supported, but as I said, this 4th pillar will also help to create a network, to facilitate the creation of a network of European fact-checkers and researchers. And the aim of this European multidisciplinary community, if you want, is to ensure the full coverage of the European Union's territory and to facilitate really the build-up and the interconnection between not only the researchers and the fact-checkers, but also between the national disinformation centers and the national services who are involved in this priority. I also thought it was interesting for us to look ahead to the new Commission's mandate. Before I do that, first maybe building on this network of fact-checkers and researchers, I would like to announce also that the European Commission is creating a European platform on disinformation. And the aim of that platform is that all the relevant actors will be connected, let's say, on the same platform. It will be a platform supported by the External Action Service and the Commission services, and it will regroup, but I'll come back later to that in my presentation, all the myth-busting and actions against EU initiatives against disinformation in one area, in one spot online. So as I said, looking ahead, what about our President-elect von der Leyen? As she talked about disinformation in her political guidelines. We've done a lot through the past mandate, but what will happen next? Well, in her political guidelines, which she presented in front of the European Parliament in July of this year, she said that we should develop a joint approach and common standards to tackle issues such as disinformation and online hate messages. So she also announced that she will put forward a European Democracy Action Plan to do so, and which will address the threats of external intervention. What this means politically, well, I'll recommend you to follow her speech in the European Parliament on the 24th of October. There she will explain in more detail what's to come. And of course, if you want to know what it entails in terms of legislative proposals, there is a Commission work program which will be presented in November, by the end of November or December upcoming. So for more info, I'd say let's stay tuned and follow the speech and the Commission work program coming up very soon. Now I'm nearing the end of my part, Alexandre, but there's one thing I wanted to share still with you here today. Speaking from the Director General of Communication, the representations which I'm part of are a part of that Director General within the European Commission. As European institution, we are, the Commission ourselves, very often the object of disinformation. And I wanted to end my share of the presentation with how we tackle it, or how we intend to tackle it at the Commission. So first of all, we invested a lot in detection, but also in positive messages. And this mainly through our corporate campaigns, one of which EU Protects, which some of you who attended the previous sessions are already familiar with. But our other campaigns, such as InvestEU and EU and Me, are other nice examples of how we try to distribute positive messaging and how we try to tackle disinformation from the inside, let's say. The links are embedded in the presentation, so if you are interested in digging a bit deeper in how we do this in the framework of these campaigns, feel free to do so. Questions always welcome, of course, afterwards too. And secondly, we've also been investing a great deal in debunking and in myth-busting. The External Action Service, for instance, has a dedicated platform since 2015, which contains a huge amount of analyses of cases, people involved of different member states working actively to counter disinformation every day. It's the orange label you see there, EU versus Disinfo. The link is also embedded, so feel free to go and have a look. Also, our Director General for Regional Policy does very nice debunking and myth-busting actions. They integrate initiatives in that respect, and mainly, of course, linked to the usage of funds, of EU funds, and every aspect linked to cohesion policy. And last but not least, my own DG Com has been very active on debunking and demystifying in the different Commission representations in the member states. So I already told you about this EU platform, which will be live, I think, in springtime, maybe of next year. I see that my colleague Tina has joined us here in the room. She's the head of unit in charge of the corporate communication campaigns, but also working a lot on disinformation. Thanks, Tina, for being here. So she might have some more info later on when the EU platform against disinformation will be live in the near future. And the idea, as I said, is that all these different actions within the Commission Directions will be linked up to each other and be accessible not only to our services but also to the citizens, the member states, the civil society, and so on. So thanks a lot for your attention during this first part of the presentation. Now over to the main course. Alexandre, over to you.
Thank you so much, Una. I would like to thank the Commission and Voxpol for inviting us today to this presentation. It's an honor to be here to present the small work that we do as a small NGO in Brussels. So for the people that don't know the DisinfoLab, and I'm afraid we might have a lot of people knowing about the DisinfoLab. We are a very small NGO based in Brussels, created almost 2 years ago now, with a mission to research, investigate disinformation on one side and to understand trends and try to connect stakeholders working on disinformation issues, whether they are fact-checkers, journalists, academics, researchers, or media literacy initiatives in different European countries. I would like, we're going to start with, we are going to have two main things in this presentation. The first one is to have a look at the Belgian perspective on disinformation and looking back at the work we did as a member of the expert group and trying to have a little bit of back to the future context, like remind ourselves what was the context when we started this group last year, and then to have a look at the different trends that we can see linked to disinformation and political extremism. We are not extremist researchers, so we don't have an extensive knowledge of the extremist movements, and we are not interested in how they behave as extremist movements. What is interesting for us is to understand how they can use disinformation actually to hide or to gain popularity online. So to come back to it, maybe I would just take the clicker. Yeah. Oh. So what was the context of the Belgian Expert Group that worked in 2018? Remembering the 2016 US elections and the IRA accounts. So IRA was the Internet Research Agency, which is very known as a St. Petersburg troll farm. What did IRA do? And I think that's one of the most interesting things they did is it was to use a lot of fake accounts on Instagram, but also websites, also on Facebook, on Twitter, to create polarization within the US society. And US society is very polarized for many, many historical reasons. And they were very good at exploiting these internal and social cracks that they had into the society to polarize people. And if you look, there is a fantastic university of New York University. If you look at how these IRA accounts interacted during all the presidential elections in 2016, the more closer to the election, the more they were polarizing. So they started as very center-right or center-left movement, and then played on more and more extremist content to try to drift people away from finding a common ground for discussion, for debate. The second thing that was very important in how we thought about the issue was a role that involuntarily Belgium played in the French presidential campaign. Maybe many people talk about the Macron leaks. I would like to talk about the fake Le Soir website. So I don't know if you remember this story, but during the French elections, during the campaign, at some point, a story started to circulate online, which was saying that Emmanuel Macron was a favorite candidate for Saudi Arabia and he had official support from Saudi Arabia. This information was dropped down in a website called lesoir.info, which is not lesoir.be, who was designed just as Le Soir. So everything on this website was just as Le Soir, including weather forecasts, stock markets, all of the stories. The only thing that was false on this website was this story about Emmanuel Macron, which was sourced to AFP, and AFP never wrote the story like this. And because of using lesoir.info and using that kind of thing, the story spread massively, and even if you tweet it from this website, the tweet looked like just as if you were tweeting from Le Soir. So it was a very well organized campaign. Until now, there is still no clear attribution of this campaign, which has been taken down very quickly after Le Soir publishing also a press release saying that they were not this website. And it was like very organized, and it shows how content from another country can be used or can be faked or can be spoofed to have an impact on an election. So following all of these things and different work done on disinformation, there were a consensus while the high-level group was working at the European level to start working on the impact of disinformation at the Belgian level. So that's how Minister De Croo, like digital minister for the federal government in Belgium, came with this idea of setting up a Belgian Expert Group with a two-step consultation part, which was a public consultation to ask Belgian citizens how they felt about this information, who should tackle this information, who's the best stakeholders to work on this, and to be the feeling and the feedback of the population on this. And the second part was to assemble a group of different stakeholders from different fields, so both academics, two journalists from the public broadcast, so the ombudsman from VRT and Alain Jabach from RTBF, and an NGO. Of course, because it's Belgium, it's always complicated. That's what makes the charm of the country. And at the beginning of the group, there were already, let's say, backlash about the fact that the federal state taking the initiative, but the fact that culture and communication is actually a communitarian responsibility, that also the regional entities could play a role in this. So there was a little bit of people looking at each other with very few trust about the work of the group, which didn't help at the beginning to start the discussion. But we had a very good start of the discussion and a very clear mandate. First, had to define what the threat is at the Belgian level, and to provide recommendations and solutions to implement for the Belgian state. What was very clear, and we are now used to that terms of disinformation, etc. Like last year and 2 years ago, everybody was talking about fake news. In France, we had a fake news law, etc. So the first thing, and we're very quick to agree on this, was to use the disinformation term instead of fake news. We acknowledge also that the creation of disinformation is very easy to do. You don't need anything to have to create disinformation. You just need a keyboard and a computer, basically. You don't need great skills. If you are good, if you have good imagination, you can create it right on the moment. The very much problem we had was the distribution of disinformation, because it's also very cheap, because we have online platforms that can allow you to reach many people that you couldn't reach originally before they were existing. So you have the capacity, what is called the freedom of reach. So you have the capacity to reach a lot of people very quickly, and you have a virality, which is also designed by the platform to make people use these platforms and to have interest of using these platforms. We were also very clear, and that was a very strong discussion when you have an expert group with representative of the government inside the table, to say that it was not up to the government to decide what's true, what's not true, and one of the recommendations that we had that was to basically to exclude the government of any strong regulation or strong decision part into looking at what should be done in terms of supporting civil society, but to have the government as an enabler, to have public authorities as enablers that can help to bring people around the table, that can support and foster discussion by giving means to have place where actually stakeholders can discuss and can share ideas together. And also, I think one of the main things that we agreed on was to have more research. We are lucky enough in Belgium to have very good universities working on disinformation. More fact-checking. Last year in Belgium, I think we were very poor in that field. Now we have eventually one organization which is under the IFCN certification for fact-checking, and we have 2 initiatives that are now starting to be strong in Belgium, but we see it's very fragile. If you look at the previous federal elections, we didn't have a lot of organized fact-checking, which was much more done on an ad hoc basis, and more quality journalism, and I think that's also something which is very important. And then we came with this vision, which was try to take advantage of the position of Belgium. Belgium has a chance to be in the center of Europe and to have all the European institutions and therefore all the major international platforms have their office there. So the idea was to say, what if we could be an example for other countries to build a vision where we can have a space for discussion with researchers, with fact checkers, with journalists, and with the platforms together. And the vision that we developed was to have a civil society response to disinformation. Was we called it a consultation platform, where we could have journalists, fact checkers, academics that were in touch, and to include the platforms in that consultation platform, to be able to actually have a look and discuss what could be the cases, how to have access to data, how to be sure data is used in the right way, and to have this space where actually civil society can start to organize itself and to develop new ideas, new concepts. So with four main field of actions. First, to trigger research and to enable direct link between researchers and fact checkers and journalists, researchers and the platforms. The second one, to develop tools. I think there are still a great need, and we talk about media literacy, digital literacy a lot, but I think we still have many tools to develop in this field. And I'm very happy that, for instance, the Commission is really helping on this through different tools like We Verify. To have more quality journalism, I think in that area we thought about having more fact-checking and more, let's talk it directly, more money for journalism, because I think journalists, to be good, needs money and not to be dependent always from advertisement. And of course, media literacy, digital literacy action, especially at the local and at the grassroots level. We have to say we were very happy with this. Unfortunately, also because we drafted two main solutions. The first one was the constitution platform, and the second one support quality journalism. We discovered that Prime Minister Michel announced in front of the Belgian Federal Parliament a fact-checking fund of 1.5 million euro 1 year ago to fund fact-checking initiative in Belgium, which was like one of the recommendations of the Belgian Expert Group. Unfortunately, because it's Belgium and also part of the charm, government collapsed just before the vote of the budget, which made it possible for this fund to be voted. And it's quite unclear until that day that this is part of actual federal discussions to form a government, or if this work will be taken down by the next government. State of play, also that we have two initiatives that are emerging. Fakey, which is a French-speaking initiative from RTBF, which is basically a tool allowing people to send a link, mostly by mobile, to a database of fake or of already classified news outlets, primarily using the decodex from Le Monde, and also other detection of potential misinformation. And there are also Fact Check London, which is a fact-check initiative from the French community. So I think in that part of it, and it's a bit frustrating because I think Belgium was in advance in this, because having this Belgian Expert Group was not something that has been done by many countries, maybe France, UK, but that's not something that has been very, very strong in different EU countries. And you always have the feeling of a missed opportunity. But I think what was very good is that the vision that has been developed here is completely coherent with what the Commission has been advocating also from its part, and with new visions that are now emerging, whether it's the question of algorithm oversight in France. I don't know if you're familiar about the Facebook mission, which recommends to have a scrutiny of algorithm recommendation and to have audit of algorithms of the big platforms, and to favorite cooperation between different actors. So I think the work that has been done is useful because it's there and can be taken by other expert groups or other governments, and I think it was a very good first step. Frustrating first step, but let's hope that something will unblock very soon with the formation of the next government. Just to have a look about the latest trends we observed in disinformation. This is something linked also to extremist, to online political extremism. You know this, what is disinformation? I think I don't need a very strong explanation of this, but we are looking into the fake information deliberately and often covertly spread in order to influence public opinion or obscure the truth. So when we're looking at investigating this information, we're looking at these four major steps. So do we have fake content? So is the claim just or wrong? And that's mostly the work of journalists, that's the part we do. Every stakeholder should do his job. And I think it's cooperation that can help to have a better civil society organization. So looking at false content, which could be false claims, could be false pictures, decontextualization, so put a picture and use it in different contexts, could be deepfakes, talk a lot about this, we don't see that much about it, but it's certainly one of the concerns. Then we're looking at deliberately, it's not spent, it's spread, but looking at how the content is distributed online, how do you have people that are buying advertisement, do you have fake accounts, do you have sock puppet accounts, so basically everything that can help you to inflate the number of views of the disinformation or trying to make it legitimate. The cover is also very interesting. Are you transparent about what you claim? Do we know where the source comes from? And I think that's a very important thing to try to look at if we have automation, if we have that kind of techniques, we can help to cover something being spread. And the last one is, of course, the influence of public opinion. Could be voter suppression. So telling people that, no, you don't vote on Sunday, you will vote on Monday, and then you don't go to the polls, or voter suppression. So we could have polarization, we can have political gain, and we can have financial gain. And never forget this. I think that's one of the main political, main financial incentives of disinformation. You can make money out of it, and you can make a lot of money out of it through advertisements. So this is something that enters into many strategies of organized disinformation. So I'm going to talk about a concrete case, which is actually using all of these elements and show you how they are organized themselves. I have still 20 minutes, so it's good. So a few weeks ago, and I have to thank someone in the room for supporting this, one of my colleagues, Roman. We spotted something which was checked by AFP. And AFP fact-checked this story. I don't know if you know about this. It's about an Italian story. It was an Italian cop that has been killed in the middle of a covert operation. It's quite unclear how everything happened. And it provoked a large amount of reaction in Italy first. And it was very interesting to understand that at the beginning there were a lot of conspiracy, false information circulating about this case. And AFP Factuel, which is a fact-checking service of Agence France Presse, fact-checked one of these stories from a page called Je soutiens la police, so I support the police, extend the police, I think in Netherlands. And the question was to how this page was sharing a story saying that this policeman was killed by 2 African migrants, which was not the case because the 2 assaulters were actually 2 American tourists. And so AFP fact-checked the story. And my colleague told me, like, it's really weird, this page just for the police. You know, it's kind of sketchy stuff. So we went into this page, and it was very interesting to see. This page is down now, so you cannot see it. We have a screenshot of an archive. And it was like a Facebook page created in 2017 with 172,000 fans, and it always published content from the same website, which was called Suavelos or from Belgium. I never heard about this website before. And when we looked at the content that was published, we also published content from Suavelos, but sometimes from other pages. And they all had Je soutiens. So, because I support firefighters, I support healthcare workers, I support terrorism victims. It was very weird to see how they were republishing other pages which were like this in exactly the same way that I support. And when we looked at the recommendation and the page liked by this page, so this page liked other pages, and we had like Madame Suavelos, Pétition Action, Suavelos News, I support our militaries, and Vive la France. It was very interesting to see that the website was called Je soutiens la police. So we tried to look a little bit at the different pages that was like cross-posting. It was very interesting to see that all of these pages like cross-posted each other. So you can see like the related pages of I support our military. They also had Notre Quotidien, so our daily news, let's say, but also Madame Suavelos, so another link. Then you have I support our military reposting I support the police like in the same minute. Also quoting this I support the police website. Then you have I support all our healthcare workers quoting Suavelos. Then you have stop violence against women, which is very fine, and posting something from Suavelos at 3 a.m. in the morning, but like in the same minute. But if you look at stop violence against women, it's also cross-posting other things from I support police. If you look at Notre Quotidien, so our daily post, it's also quoting Suavelos News in the same minute. And by looking at all of this, you see like you have so many of these pages that are reposting in the same minute every time. It's not always the same sense. Like One time it could be I support the police posting first, and then it's I support the military posting first. So actually no thing, but you have the impression that everything is coordinated because you have to be very quick at 3:01 a.m. in the morning to actually repost something that you see right now. So we wanted to, so we collected all of the pages that we saw, and we found like a page like I like and I support the animals. Very nice. Also posting Surveillance content. We had Madame Surveillance, we had I support the police, we had Vive la France, you had I am a patriot, we had I support all the victims of terrorism, and they were all quoting whether surveillance.eu, whether I support the police, whether our daily post, whether, and like the pattern was clear from month and month and month. We said, okay, Surveillance. What is Surveillance? So we decided to go on the website and to look at what is Surveillance. And Surveillance is very direct. They explain what they do in the About Us is very clear. What they are a white communitarist organization. And their role is to support white communitarism in France, to, I quote, cure white ethnomasochism. So the fact for the whites to accept that they are treated poorly. They organized a summer white camp, and they were very transparent about this. The two founders of the organization were also listed. And on this website, you had a lot of, you had a link to give money through PayPal, you had advertisement from Google Ads or Taboola. Taboola is a very well-known advertiser that is producing a lot of content, related content. So when the Taboola advertisement for Surveillance was for survivalist guides and how to survive in the jungle, that kind of things. And you had also links to Facebook page, Twitter, Telegram, VKontact, PayPal, TP. So all of these platforms to actually spread their content. And what we wanted to do was to, okay, because we have also this website, I support the police, and Medica, what is the link between this? And we looked at the server hosting the Surveillance website. This is all public information. That's very important. Everyone can do this. If you look at the server of the website, we found that there were white feminism, also, so Je soutiens la police, Notre Quotidien was here, Belgica was here. So all of these names from different websites were actually managed by the same group. And we found out that we also had other things like fluide racial. So I don't know if you have many French people here, but fluide glacial is a very dark humor comic magazine in France. And they made fluide racial, so racial fluide, which was racist comic books being published on Twitter and on Facebook. You also had like spoofed far-right websites. So you know BuzzFeed, they had BuzzBeat. BuzzBeat is like a bead is like a fake joke. So BuzzBeat, they had in French we have Le Gorafi, which is a parody of Le Figaro, and they had Le Gorafaf. Faf is like for fascist. So they had all of these websites that were managed daily, and all of these websites quoting each other, Telegram channels. You also had a very nice Facebook page called like Occidental Beauties, posting only picture of half-naked white women. Everything is good for attention. And they all organized this. And we also had links to their public Telegram channel. Everything was public. So you could see that they had like this Telegram channel for Surveillance, that during the Christchurch attack, they have been posting the video of the attack and making some very racist comments about this. You also have this picture of Salvini doing this. So this is a white power sign, that is the OK sign that has been recreated by white nationalists. And you have upper the Brendan Tarrant picture, and then down the Salvini picture, just to make a link between these two. So everything was very, very organized. But they also had another idea to to support their activities, and they had a shop. So on the website, you could find a shop which was called Alabastro, and you could go to the shop and buy shirts. Let's say like it's okay to be white, like a map of what is allegedly the IQ of population. I can let you imagine how Africa is rated on this shirt, and all of these Celtic also symbols. They also had TP. TP is a platform to crowdfund money for a YouTube channel. One of the co-founders, the YouTube channel was designed to very like provide intellectual corpse to the and substance to the white supremacy. So they had like a weekly YouTube show advertisement. And what was very interesting, if you looked at the path that visitors take when they enter into Suavelo's website, when they enter, like 50% of them enter through social platforms. And if you look at this, where they go out, they go on Telegram, which is a way to have more radicalization because you also submit to a lot of this content. And they also had one of the exit was the shop. And we were able to show that the shop was linked to what could be a false non-for-profit organization in France. So if we look at the whole circle, what we call the circle of disinformation, like you create a page, you have very polarizing content, you make things that people can like, can support as a cause, and then you provide very harsh content. I think the page on the animals is a very good example for this. The main post, my favorite post was the one about a seagull being covered by curry. So you see how this is built. Then you attract people to your website. From this, you can whether polarize them or monetize them. So you get money out of them involuntarily through advertisement or directly by people contributing, and use the money to sustain your organization, to have your actions, your activity, and you pay yourself to be able to continue having these 15, 16 Facebook pages and Twitter accounts that are doing this. So it's very well organized, and it's quite easy to do if you think about it. And everything of this is everyone can do it with a little bit of organization. And it's not a unique case. I'm sure you heard like Police Lives Matter, which was allegedly coming from New York City, and it was run from Kosovo, 2.3 million followers, publishing at the beginning very let's say police content, and then like pro-Trump content. And then you had like, for instance, I Love America, which was run from Ukraine, 1.1 million fans, and also doing the same kind of attracting people to promote an agenda. And I think it's very easy on social platforms right now to create a cause and to be able to provide content with an agenda without having to disclose who you are or what you do this and to run this from different countries, which raises a lot of questions about foreign interferences. If you look also at the trends, because this is a trend of organized thing, but you also have, let's say, longer trends. Breaking news and conspiracy misleading is always working very well. So, and I think accurate reporting is also very important in this. So on the left, you have a picture which was taken during the Notre Dame fire. And it's a picture taken by Sputnik and posted on Facebook on the night of the fire with no comment. And very quickly it has been recuperated by far right with the two Muslims are laughing in front of Notre Dame burning. I can't tell you how much hell these two persons lived. If I've been in touch with that lawyer at some point, it has been very difficult for them. And the problem is on this. One of the problems is that the Guardian made an inaccurate report of it, saying that this picture was doctored, which it was not. And this is not helping to understand the mechanisms, because then you enter into a conversation saying, you said it's doctored because it's Russian, but actually it was true. So what do you say is true? And I think we had a bit the same of questions last week with the EP Today story. I don't know if you're familiar about this, a fake website that was copy-pasting both Russia Today and Voice of America content. And we had a lot of reporting saying that this was actually managed by Russia. And if you look at all evidence, it's mostly managed for Indian interests. But if you're saying it's Russia, it's an inaccurate reporting. And then you're not helping to build trust into journalism, into what you see, and you start to have real strong distrust in such society, which is a very long-term issue that is played every day under disinformation. The second one is war. So a lot of disinformation and conspiracy around war, mostly because of, in my opinion, for poor government communications. And it was crazy to see that we had like 4 individuals posting pictures, and this became massive because they had black water. And the thing is, for at least for 1 or 2 of these individuals that have been contacted, it was because of the poor state of their plumbing. But the fact that you have this kind of signs that are occurring when something big happens in the same city create a lot of attraction, a lot of emotion. And this is very viral in the way it spreads. And it's very complicated to bring rationality back into the box. So I think we need to be very, very careful. And actually today, the platforms are, by design, are helping this virality, because that's how they are popular. So the breaking news and the conspiracy misleading is definitely one of the trends. I think the polarization and emotion is also very important. Greta Thunberg is right now the target of many disinformation. And I think the question is more about, are we discussing about climate change, or are we discussing about someone? I think also we observed a lot that during the Amazon fires, you have a lot of pictures which are decontextualized. And when journalists report on this, basically people say, yeah, we know, but it illustrates very well what we want to say. So there is also a movement of accepting false image or decontextualized image, because yeah, it's false, but it's helping me. And I think this is one of the major concerns that we need as a whole, as a society, to acknowledge and to integrate in how we work. So what's the conclusion? The conclusion is disinformation is a symptom, it's not a disease. We can't cure disinformation. We can't suppress disinformation. Why? Because it's been there since the man is born. So we can't. That's not something we're gonna delete from our society. What we need to do is to think about how to reduce it, how to reduce the impact of it. But we always had disinformation. Before that, it was in the bar with Uncle Maurice, who was saying bullshit drinking his 2 beers. Now it's online and everybody can see it, but it always existed. We just need to be sure that we can have the proper mechanism to understand, to tackle it, but also to be resilient about it. And I think that's one of the major issues we need to tackle. And when I say we, I say we. Because very often in a lot of meetings we say, yes, civil society. No, civil society is here. It's both public authorities, citizens, NGOs, journalists. We need to work all together in this. It's not someone else's job, it's everyone's job. I think the second one is like disinformation goes beyond official political content. We have a lot of discussions right now about political content. If you look at the Travelos case, it's not political. It's not a political party. Even if they supported one of the party running for the European elections in 2019 in France, but it's not political. And the more rules we put only on political content, the more disinformation will go on the other side when there is no rule. So the question is not how to regulate political content. The question is not how to regulate content itself. The question is to understand how content is distributed. Who is accountable for distributing false content online? I think there are already first steps that have been already taken into acknowledging issue, and I think it's very good. And it touches so many different areas, from how we target it personally or as a group. Why are we recommended by this type of content? Why do we see this? It's not neutral. When you go on Facebook, something you see, it's because an algorithm thinks that you should see it. And you should not see it for your own good. You should see it because the purpose of all major tech companies is to collect what is the most precious thing that you have, is your attention, is a click, because that's what they sell. So why do you see this? What's the major thing behind this? I think there is a assessment of code of practice which will be done. I think code of practice was a first step. As I'm saying a lot, we are better with a code of practice than without a code of practice. I think it needs much more improvement, and I think it should be directly into more thinking about the architecture of content distribution than content. I think we need a common response, both from regulatory and civil society perspective, and we'll have to work together on this, and there will be different agendas, of course, but I think there is a common framework to be designed. And this framework is, I'm stealing one of my favorite things, what we call it's the ABC framework, and I'm adding the D from Camille François from Graphica. So what is the ABCD framework? We need to understand in disinformation the ABCD. Actors, who is doing it, behavior, how they're doing it, content, what's actually false and how it's been modified, and D is distribution, how this is being distributed online, political advertisement, algorithm, false accounts. So I think we should be very careful, and it's a cat and mouse game, and I'm afraid sometimes in cat and mouse game we are chasing the wrong thing, so we'll end with this. Because if we think about regulating only online content and the quality of truth or false content, then I think we're going to blow up on a very big issue. So this is just a reminder to say this is a very complex issue, and let's not burn this little small mouse hole in the wall and looking at how the house might fall up if we don't do anything together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexandre, for your interesting presentation. Point well taken on the last thing you mentioned on strategies and dissemination rather than content. I also noticed lots of links with the previous presentation, taking down violent online content, for instance, the video of Christchurch, which was also disseminated by Swabilos apparently. And then white genocide, white supremacy posts by such actors, which was touched upon by our speaker of last week. So again, those who weren't there in the last sessions, feel free to check out the presentations, because I think, as I said before, that there are lots of links and connections between the knowledge Alexandre shared with us and the really concrete cases you shared with us here today. And finally, on the Belgian Expert Group, well, I think we can all hope that your coherent vision with what has been developed so far at European level is carried forward in the next political cycle at federal and regional level. So thanks again for being here with us today, and the floor is now open to all of you. We will be very happy to get your questions, remarks. We have about 15